Toxic debris rains down. People are urged to stay indoors. And America and Israel mourn the crew, asking, why has it happened again?
The ITV Weekend News with Mark Austin.
Good evening. America is in shock tonight after the space shuttle Columbia exploded just minutes before landing. Dramatic pictures show the shuttle breaking up in the sky over Texas. 7 astronauts were on board, including 2 women and 1 Israeli. All are feared dead. Toxic debris is spread over a wide area of Texas. President Bush has returned to the White House from Camp David. It's not clear what caused the catastrophe, though officials say this evening there are no indications of terrorism. From the United States, Robert Moore reports.
This is Mission Control, Houston, flight controllers.
16 minutes before the landing of the Space Shuttle Columbia, and Mission Control had no indication of trouble.
Notes and data.
But high above central Texas at 200,000 feet, the shuttle was experiencing a catastrophic failure. A cameraman filmed the tragedy as it unfolded. NASA's oldest shuttle visibly breaking up while traveling at a speed of 12,500 miles an hour. For many agonizing minutes, NASA simply reported a loss of communications.
The last communications with the spacecraft occurred about 8 a.m. Central Time as it was above Central Texas, currently seeking communications or tracking data from the spacecraft.
Despite the deployment of NASA's rescue teams to Texas, there appears to be no hope for the 7 astronauts aboard. Civilians are now being warned to stay away from debris fields.
Any debris that may be found that may be related to the Space Shuttle contingency should be immediately reported to local authorities and avoided. Debris may be hazardous due to the toxic nature of propellants used on board the Space Shuttle.
The families of the astronauts gathered together in Florida were bussed away quietly to an undisclosed location. They had been waiting at the Cape Canaveral landing strip for the return of their loved ones. Columbia had blasted off from Florida 16 days ago. 7 astronauts, including the first Israeli in space.
Houston now controlling the flight of Columbia.
They had conducted over 2 weeks of scientific experiments. This, the 28th flight for Columbia, and the 113th in the history of the space shuttle.
For a 39-degree inclination to orbit, shuttle in a heads-down, wings level position.
America is today in mourning for the 7 who are presumed dead. It is 17 years since the Challenger shuttle was lost on launch. Now Americans are coming to terms with the loss of more astronauts. This is a devastating blow for NASA and America's space program. For the first hours after the disaster, amid the shock, the space agency would only say communication had failed with Columbia. Now they have officially confirmed the loss of the shuttle and her crew. Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
Investigators are now desperately trying to find out exactly what went wrong. The shuttle was due to land at 2:16 p.m. British time at the Kennedy Space Station in Florida. At 2 p.m. it lost contact with NASA Control Center when it was 200,000 feet over Texas, traveling at 12,500 miles an hour. Witnesses reported hearing a loud bang before the flaming debris was seen falling from the sky. A search and rescue mission was launched immediately. Well, joining me now is our science editor, Lawrence McGinty. Lawrence, is there any indication what could have caused such a catastrophic failure?
Well, I've seen 2 shuttle accidents now, Mark, the Challenger almost 17 years ago to the day, and now this one. And in both cases, I think the pictures tell the story. If we look at the pictures of the contrails that you can see, just there, you can see below and to the rear, something has come off the shuttle. You can also see, if you look into the vapor trails now, there's twists in the trails. It's spinning in some way. It's out of control. And remember here, it's gliding. It's not under power. It's got no engines, but it's still doing over 12,000 miles an hour. The slightest movement and things will start falling off, and that's what you can see there. Multiple debris coming into land. What caused the initial fracture that sent it spinning and reeling we don't know yet.
But of course, takeoff and re-entry, the most dangerous phases of any mission like this.
Absolutely. Takeoff, because there is so much fuel on board the shuttle, and that's really what happened to the Challenger. That fuel exploded, and that's why the crew were lost. And re-entry, because it's so rapid, because you're hurtling into the Earth at 12,000 miles an hour, and the only thing you can do to control it is to move the flying surfaces, the tail, and only those very, very small amounts. It's not like flying a jumbo jet.
OK, what about this debris that's now spread over wide areas of Texas? How dangerous is that?
Debris is going to be found over a wide area. I think that we have some pictures of debris in Texas. Bits of metal in themselves are not likely to be toxic, but the propellants that are used on board the shuttle to move it through space, when it's in space, are very toxic indeed, and they may contaminate some of this material, and that's why people have been warned to stay away.
And very briefly, Lawrence, what impact could this have on NASA's space program?
Well, massive. Last time the shuttle program was frozen, there was a presidential commission of inquiry. That took a long time. I think this time, too, we're likely to see a huge gap in the shuttle program. OK,
Lawrence McGinty, thanks very much for joining us. Well, joining me on the phone is Jim Cummins, NBC news correspondent, who heard the explosion at home in Dallas and who's on his way now to the crash site. Thanks very much for joining us. What exactly did you hear?
Well, Mark, I was sitting at home reading a newspaper this morning and in my home in North Dallas, and I heard what sounded like a sonic boom. There was a loud bang, and then the concussion rattled the walls of my home. My wife ran to the front door to see if it was something in our neighborhood, and she came back and said, no, there's nothing. And then about 19 minutes later, we heard the reports on television they'd lost contact with Shuttle Columbia.
Today's horrific crash is the latest in a series of disasters to beset the space shuttle. No one can forget, of course, the terrible scenes as Challenger exploded on takeoff in 1986. Despite its commercial success, there have been many problems with the shuttle program. Here's Harry Smith.
And it has cleared the tower. Today's disaster is the worst to hit the shuttle since the Challenger explosion in 1986. The spacecraft was just 1 minute into takeoff when it was destroyed. The crew of 7 were killed, including the first civilian astronaut, teacher Krista McAuliffe.
And I just hope everybody tunes in on day 4 now to watch the teacher teaching from space.
The loss of such innocently optimistic crew members had a profound effect on America, especially as they'd set off with the aim of bringing space closer to the people.
4, 3, 2. Challenger 7 were aware of the dangers, but overcame them and did their jobs brilliantly. We mourn 7 heroes.
And we have a main engine shutdown at
The effect on the shuttle
seconds.
program was to set it back 2 years, and it suffered many other delays. In 1993, Columbia's mission had to be aborted with just 3 seconds to go.
Columbia is now being saved.
And liftoff of Columbia.
It was 6 months before another attempt could be made. The effect of today's disaster could be felt for years to come. Harry Smith, ITV News.
Right, let's recap now on this afternoon's events. At 2 p.m. British time, NASA lost contact with the Space Shuttle Columbia, the first indication that something had gone terribly wrong. 15 minutes later, the first pictures came in showing debris from the shuttle raining down as the craft re-entered the Earth's atmosphere over Texas. All 7 crew members on board, including 2 women and an Israeli, are feared dead. NASA has warned the public not to touch any of the wreckage, which is scattered over a wide area. There's continuing coverage over on the ITV News channel, of course. You can keep up with all the latest developments as they happen. And we'll be back with the very latest on today's space shuttle tragedy at 10 past 10. From us for now. Bye-bye.